people think that the foods that they are eating are often nutritious when that might not be the case. Why is that so? What happens?
Well, I often describe it as being on autopilot,
Okay.
because many of us actually are not really conscious of what we're eating or what we're putting into our mouth. So one of the things that I'd really focus on with people is to be more mindful about foods. And if we really think about what we need and what good nutrition is, in other words, the building blocks of the cells, or the energy to keep us going throughout the day, we probably would be more conscious about making better choices. But I think it's just a lack of thought for many people. Sure, there's not much difference between a snack. I just need something to give me an energy boost. So pick up anything.
Yeah, so I'm hungry, so I'll just go to the shop and get a bar of chocolate.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So I think it's some part of that is kind of being a little bit mindless, operating on autopilot, really thinking about something else that you're doing and not prioritizing nutrition. One of the funny things is a lot of people say to me, like, I have no time to eat lunch, so they might sort of skip through, have maybe nothing to eat in the morning time, have been fasting all night, obviously, and the blood sugar level will obviously fall
Sure.
in the afternoon. But it's a little bit like akin to saying, look, I am too busy driving to stop for petrol. I mean, sooner or later, you're not going to be able to function right, So the importance of nutrition is really to look and make sure that we have enough energy, but also every single body system relies on nutrients. So in terms of, fertility, there are certain nutrients that are equated with that, like selenium and zinc. In terms of digestion, the B vitamins, they're made in the digestive tract. So, we need a whole myriad of things that we have to get in food. We can't actually make them. So vitamins and minerals are essential for that very reason, because we cannot make them. We must eat them. And I just think that a lot of the choices that we make are unconscious, if you like. We just kind of go through the day. We're very busy. We're doing, and very often we're not really listening to our own body signals to say, are we hungry? And what do we need to fill that gap then? What's the best thing to eat?
And is there different types of energy? Because I know if I'm hungry and I'm doing some sports, I might have some kind of a sports drink or something to kind of give me energy. I mean, is that good energy or is that bad energy?
I think it's the power of advertising, isn't it? Because when most people think that their energy is flagging, they think chocolate, or they think maybe a sports drink, something to give me energy. But if you look at, I went to a forecourt garage just before we met, and I picked up all of these foods in the forecourt garage.
Okay.
And people would be obviously conscious of queuing. They might pick up a paper. They've just got their fuel. They're interested in getting from A to B, and they might pick up a drink.
Sure.
There are 3 drinks here: water, this energy drink, and there's a sort of a canned drink here.
Okay.
Now, this one here has absolutely no calories, obviously, and no sugar. Okay. This one is a completely different picture. This one has 52 grams of sugar. 52 grams of sugar. Now, if 5...
Is that bad?
Well, that's a lot.
Okay.
That's a lot. And you're getting into a car, probably driving from A to B. Do you actually need that type of sugar in a drink?
Of course not.
And then, of course, if you pick up this and this together, you've got a chocolate confectionery, sugary, fatty snack with a lot of sugar. So 52 grams of sugar is a hell of a lot in one drink, in one sitting.
Okay.
And then when you're obviously having it, it depends on, of course, whether you're active or not. And mind you, if you were, going training and you knew that you were going to be active for 2 hours during that training session, then obviously something like a sports drink can help you. It can actually refuel you, and it can keep you going longer, so performance doesn't suffer. But certainly most of us who are sedentary and who are overweight and who are minding the waistline, we really don't need drinks like that. There's a huge difference between that, but it's very simple just to say, I need energy, so I'll pick up something that has sugar, but it's not the right choice in many respects, because something like this now is an interesting proposition. I haven't seen it before, but it's apple juice with sparkling water.
Yeah, they're very common, aren't they? Those kind of fruit juice drinks with carbonated water and sugar.
So this would kind of fall in between these two. It doesn't have as much sugar, but it certainly would give you an energy boost. And there's nothing, and what you're looking for is the more natural type of food or drink. So obviously natural fruit juice is probably the best, freshly squeezed,
Sure.
but when you freshly squeeze anything, you actually extract the fibre. So you're left with a lot of sugar, and you've taken the fibre away. So it's not going to be very filling.
So freshly squeezed orange juice, for example.
Is not a good idea really if you're trying to watch your weight. You'd be
Really?
much better off eating the
actual orange
entire
itself.
orange. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I could push 8 oranges in front of you and I'd say, there you go now. Eat those for breakfast, and you'd get bored, I'd say, peeling them after 2 or 3.
Of course.
And you'd get fed up, and you'd think, I've had enough.
I'm full, yeah,
But
thank
if
you.
I squeezed those oranges and I gave them to you and I said, there you go now, drink that, you could have that gone pretty
Just like
quickly.
that. And there's
Yeah.
sugar in that.
Well, there's a natural sugar, albeit it's natural sugar, but there's no fibre now. I've taken the fibre away.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you've got the sugar of 8 natural oranges.
But is
in
sugar
a
bad
juice.
for us?
Not necessarily. I mean, sugar is carbohydrate, and everything that we eat, like starch, like bread, cereals, everything is broken down into a simple sugar called glucose.
Okay.
But in today's world, what we're finding is we are eating too many calories, and some of that is coming from sugar. So if you're overweight or trying to watch your weight, one of the things you would do would be look and see, well, how many starchy carbohydrates am I eating? How many good ones that are offering other nutrients
Sure.
along with fibre and vitamins and minerals? And how many sort of less nutritious, sugary, snacky things am I eating that are providing very little else, no fibre and no vitamins and minerals? So it's not that sugar is bad for us, but we need to know how much we need.
How much do we need? How much does an adult male or an adult female need in terms of sugar?
Well, that would really vary on their activity level.
Okay.
So the more sporty you are, the more active you are, the more sugar that you can have and enjoy.
So say somebody is in an office job, 9 to 5,
Yeah.
gets the bus home from work, they
Yeah.
sit at home watching TV all night, they're actually not doing any exercise at all.
Okay.
How much sugar should that person have?
Well, probably somewhere between 70 and 90 grams, depending on the weight of that person.
Okay.
So remember, this is 52 grams.
Okay, so one of those is almost enough for a person.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and remember, you'll also get little bits of sugar in, fruit and vegetables, but also you'll get some sugar in things like milk.
Milk.
That
Sure.
contains lactose,
Sure.
a simple sugar as well. So all of them count,
Okay.
And I suppose the big thing that we're finding is that these small choices, like what to drink during the day, do make a difference because we're doing them on a daily basis.
Yeah, of course.
So over time, very gradually, we tend to put on weight.
Okay.
And it's the small changes, even if you went from something like this, an unconscious decision, down to this, or more of this, you're making a really good saving in terms of sugar and in terms of calories,
Okay.
This is usually what you require for the energy boost. You actually need to hydrate.
So water is enough.
Yeah, sometimes it is enough. And that's
Wow,
what I'd say
okay.
to people. Look, check, is it really hunger? And is the headache or the flagging energy levels, is that really dehydration?
Sure.
Because very often it is. We're operating in very kind of, warmed environments now. Central heating is.
Yeah.
It's probably hydration, generally
Okay.
speaking. So I would say, look, it's equally important what we drink. When we look at some of the snacks as well, it's fascinating because these are all sold as snacks in a garage. But
Sure.
I would suggest really that some of them are mini meals.
Really?
Really, because when you pick up something like that, okay, this is a pretzel product. So
Yes.
I looked at it and I thought, oh, that must be a healthy product, pretzels. But I turned it over and I looked in terms of the calorie content alone. Now, somebody who's watching their weight might be on something like anywhere between maybe 1,300 to 1,700 calorie diet as a woman.
Okay.
And this product has 650 calories.
You're serious?
And it's not that big.
No.
You could see yourself eating that on the way to a meeting.
Absolutely.
In the car while you're trying to have, a lunch on the run or whatever. But really, the nutrition, it's not going to be a good substitute for lunch. And this has 650 calories, whereas that has 60 calories. Now, if you're looking for a quick energy boost, this is going to be broken down to glucose faster than maybe a product like that.
Okay.
Okay? So really, we have to really challenge this idea of I need energy,
Sure.
so therefore I need a sports drink or a sugary drink and a chocolate bar. It doesn't work like that because very often many of us have stored energy. Like we want to break down the energy that we've stored. We've put it away because we didn't, use it up.
Sure.
And we have expanding waistlines. So we actually need to start tapping into that and saying, look, let's burn some of the energy that we've stored for the rainy day. Now's the time. Let's refuel, first of all, with water, and maybe have a piece of fruit and see how the energy level is after that. And if you do need something, and if you're genuinely hungry, then absolutely eat. But it may be far better to get something like a sandwich, which has a salad and maybe turkey or hummus or some sort of lean protein in it, rather than this, which has more calories in it.
Wow.
And very little nutrition.
Sure.
So I think one of the big things is that it's the unconscious snacking. And why is it that these are so tempting? I mean, I walked into the forecourt and there was a whole tray of these muffins in front of me, and I just thought they looked fabulous. Like, there was strong lighting on them. They looked as if, if you were really good to yourself and you really deserved a reward,
you treat yourself.
Should have to have that.
Sure.
Because it was just begging to be eaten. But like, this is all around us. Like, it's not.
It's very difficult to find healthy. Like, when you are hungry and you decide, okay, I'm hungry now, I need to find something healthy to eat.
Yeah.
Where do you go? Because shops have all of this stuff and more.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult to find nutrition in anything that's sold in the average kind of shop, isn't it?
It is. It's difficult, particularly in the grab and go places, what I call, the forecourts. It is. But there are some options. I mean, and what I would always say, there's damage limitation as well.
Sure.
Some people would say, look, that's a piece of fruit, and I'm not looking for a piece of fruit. Nothing else on this table is going to taste like that, and I'm not going to pretend anything is going to, be, a good substitute. If you're looking for an indulgent snack, then you might as well go for something you like, but go for a smaller, piece of what it is. So I like the mini treats. There are mini muffins, there are mini little chocolate bars, there are mini little tastes of whatever you fancy now. But and even here, these little.
Are they healthy?
Well, nuts are very healthy. They really are. But the unsalted and unroasted ones would be the best ones.
Okay.
Now obviously, if you haven't a problem with blood pressure, you may be quite okay in taking these types of snacks.
Sure.
In moderation. There's absolutely no problem. But if you had high blood pressure, we'd be looking at the salt levels right across the board, and they wouldn't be the best snack. So again, for most people, they would be a healthier choice than something like these, or maybe crisps and things like that, which have other
of course.
additives.
And how does salt, you mentioned salt in terms of the peanuts, how does salt affect us as people? Because there's lots of salt in everything. We know fast food is huge amounts of salt, to the point where children who eat fast food don't like their own normal food because it doesn't taste salty enough.
Yeah.
But how much salt should we have in our diet? Because even certain cereals in the morning that are, they're marketed as being very healthy cereals have a huge amount of salt, which makes us dehydrated. So what else does salt do to us?
Well, it comes down to the amount of processed food in your trolley. If there's a lot of processed food in your trolley, you are guaranteed to be getting more salt than you probably need.
Okay.
It's very, very hard to meet the target. The target is that we should be having about 6 grams of salt a day.
That's a tiny amount.
That's tiny.
Isn't it? Yeah.
It's about a teaspoon. Now,
Wow.
you might think, God, I'd never eat a teaspoon of salt, but it's actually found in a lot of, even sugary foods have them. Even ice cream has salt in it.
Ice cream has salt?
Yeah, a little bit of
Really?
salt. Yeah, biscuits have salt in them. It's bizarre where you'll find it.
Okay.
But then there's the evident salty snacks, like the anchovy, the nuts, the salted nuts, and the crisps, and all of those kind of things.
Sure.
But actually what we realise now is that things like condiments that people would use at home, like soy sauce, people would never realise the salt content of some of these products, and they're lashing it into the stir fry.
Ketchup. I love ketchup.
Yeah, ketchup probably has a little bit more natural sugar, from
Okay.
the tomatoes than salt, but it would have a certain amount. It
Sure.
would, certainly. But it's very, it's difficult, and to be honest, if I wasn't a dietitian myself, I would never know the amount of salt that was found in food. So I can understand how difficult it is to avoid. So really what I say to people is try fresh, and more fresh in the trolley rather than processed. If you've got to look at, for a reason, if you have high blood pressure, then you really should be looking at labels. And the good thing about labelling now is it's made a little bit more interesting, because we don't have to sort of pursue the back of the pack so much. But on the front we see this kind of thing called GDA labelling.
Okay.
And basically it will sort of highlight very quickly the calories, the fat, the saturated fat in particular, which is the bad type of fat, the not so good type of fat, and also the salt and the sugar levels. So the last one here, the last little tag here is on salt. So you can see that in one biscuit, this is a particular type of biscuit, this has 2% of your salt intake in one biscuit. Okay? So if you were inclined to have 5 biscuits, that's 10% of your salt.
And does salt make us gain weight? If we eat too much salt, does it make us gain weight? Or why is salt bad for us?
Well, it actually, it'll mean that you're holding a little bit more water, but it's only water weight, so it's not body fat. But really the problem with salt is that it actually raises our blood pressure.
Okay.
And in time, raised blood pressure can put you at an increased risk of stroke. And heart disease, but stroke is the big problem.
Okay.
And many strokes would be absolutely preventable if people were to look more closely at labels and what they were eating. Absolutely. Because we know, and this is the challenge for all of us, we know from the World Health Organization that many of the diseases that we die of are preventable through lifestyle choice. So that, for example, 80% of deaths from coronary heart disease, 90% of type 2 diabetes, and a third of all cancers are potentially possible to prevent if.
That's incredible.
And the big if is if we look at things like our activity levels, what we eat, and stress management. But isn't that amazing?
It is. It's fascinating.
It is amazing. A third of all cancers are preventable. And again, it is our lifestyles, you know, and part of this is the small choices that we make that end up in a pattern. And I have to say one thing, that there is no such thing, even though I'm kind of pointing out things on labels, and people might think, oh, she's saying that that's a bad food and this is a good food. There's no real good or bad foods. It's the pattern that we're eating, you know,
that becomes a problem itself.
Yeah, that becomes a problem. So it's how frequently you're eating or drinking a certain food. That's the difficulty.
And the activity levels that go with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you active at all?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely.
And you know, like, I mean, you know, I work a lot with families, and families will often bring their children to fast food restaurants on Saturdays as a treat. So we now believe that if we give our children fast food, we're actually treating them and giving them a reward. Is that good for children?
Well, it's a really good point. And I, as a dietitian, I've seen so many people in clinical practice, like in my clinics, where, you know, they're using food as a reward, and it usually ends up in trouble.
How?
Because of weight gain, unfortunately. And also when we feel down, what we want to do is give ourselves a hug, and maybe that's a hug and a wrapper. So it's like, very often, if there's nobody to give us a hug, we go for this.
Chocolate.
Yeah, but that's not a good habit, because when the you know, I was going to say something, whatever hits the fan, you know, you could be looking for 2 or 3 of these. You know, I have met people who'll eat their way through a whole box of chocolates. Now,
that's common enough, isn't it?
It is common enough.
You know, if you're feeling upset, you're feeling down, you've in a relationship that's broken up, or your relationship isn't going so well. I mean, don't we have a tendency to overeat because it releases endorphins and we feel good, and it's kind of it's an initial high, but then obviously you have the weight gain and you have all the implications of that too. Isn't that what happens?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's called the eat, repent and repeat cycle.
Okay.
Because it becomes a cycle. You know, if we're actually consoling ourselves, if we're eating when we're either sad, mad or bad, you know, if we're eating for an emotion, it's never going to satisfy that emotion. We need to eat obviously for physical reasons, because we're hungry. So one of the things that we have lost touch with is our hunger. Listening to it. You know, when was the last time you really felt hungry? And
do we go to restaurants then and think, okay, I've got a huge big portion in front of me, I'm paying £25 or dollars or euros for the steak, I have to eat this. I know I'm hungry, but it's there, and I don't want the chef to feel bad. I'm actually, you know, I had dinner last night, I was afraid the chef would feel bad if I didn't eat all the dinner.
It's a good point. I think we need to be more discerning about what we put into our body. And more is not necessarily better. And, you know, I think, again, there's a big question, particularly in today's world, about what is quality food. You know, a lot of us are on very tight budgets, we're looking for very good value for money, but does that necessarily mean more for your money? Or should it be less but better quality? Because
people will often say, well, I can only afford the food that comes from a freezer. And is food from a freezer good for us? I mean,
it can be.
It can be.
It can be.
What
very
kind of
good.
freezer food is good for us? I mean, it's a whole junk food thing for children. Children who are used to eating junk food, they get, you know, used to the salt saturation in the food, so their normal food tastes bland, so they don't eat it. But then, you know, parents will often, in my experience, they'll give in to the child and give the child burgers and chips coming straight from the freezer. Is that good?
Not necessarily,
Okay.
if it's a pattern and it
This
becomes
happens in
habitual.
families I've worked with. It can happen quite a lot.
Quite a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it wouldn't be, and you're absolutely right. When salt is an acquired taste. The more we have, the more we want.
Sure.
A food tastes bland without it. So
Okay.
children that get stuck in cycles of, mini pizzas, chips, chicken nuggets, where there's little or no real chicken there,
yeah, of course.
really acquire a taste for that type of food. So much so that they tend to avoid other foods, and they find it very difficult to go outside of their comfort zone and try a green vegetable.
Yeah.
So they become stuck in a pattern which is very unhelpful. But there are things that you can put into your freezer that are very nutritious, like frozen vegetables. Okay. So even if you are buying a pizza from the fast food shop or the grocery shop,
sure,
you can still put your pizza on the table, take out a handful of frozen peas, put it on top. You can take out a tin of sweet corn, put that on top.
Sure.
You can put some rocket on top of it when it's come out of the oven. There are lots of
so
ways
you can make
to
it
add.
healthy.
Yeah, you can add nutrition to it. The other thing in terms of your freezer is frozen fish. They're frozen yogurt. There are lots of things that we could put into the freezer, frozen bread even, so that it's not looking at us. When we come in the door and we're tired and, our blood sugar's in our boots sometimes because we haven't eaten that lunch. And the first thing we'll do is we'll have 4 or 6 slices of toast. And then we'll think, you know what, I don't deserve dinner because I've actually had 6 slices of toast.
Yeah, sure.
So we leave the dinner, we miss out on the protein and the vital nutrients, and we just have a very big carb tea.
Tell me, white bread or brown bread? Is white bread good for us?
Yeah. White bread isn't necessarily bad for you, but again, it's how much you're eating. I mean, what we do know is that 8 out of 10 of us are missing fibre. Okay,
really?
8 out of 10 of us. And that leads to minor problems, digestive problems, but also things like constipation. But on a more serious note, in the long term, it develops into things like an increased risk, for example, of bowel disorders, so diverticulitis, other types of problems, irritable bowel syndrome, even maybe a risk of bowel cancer. So we have to really look and be cognizant. Again, a lot of children's foods in particular, little or no fibre. Children are drinking a lot of apple juice in the belief that it's healthy.
Yeah, is that healthy?
No, not
It's full of sugar, isn't it?
Not if you're drinking a litre a day.
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely, you'd be better off drinking a litre of water and a small glass of juice, of apple juice. So you can have 1 glass of juice as one of your 5 a day. And really, what we would be encouraging children to eat more of would be the fresh fruit. And they can have that cubed or diced, but if it's a young child, they will not want to go to a nice display of fruit and say, "Oh, Mum, can I have an apple?"
No, they're going to go for whatever they think is visually enticing, isn't it?
Absolutely. So the mum or whoever's there really take the apple, cut it, make it
nice,
easy, put it on a nice plate, make a game around it, and give it to the young child so that they get used to that taste again and again.
Do you think parents have become complacent or lazy in terms of what food we give to children as a consequence of the marketing that's out there?
Yeah.
Because if you love your child, you're going to give them the best. And this, what we see in television is this piece of chocolate is the best chocolate your child will ever taste.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen your child all day because they've been in a creche or with somebody else because you're working full time, then the natural instinct is to reward your child and to kind of compensate.
I think there's a lot in that. I mean, I wouldn't think that any parent goes out to harm their child or to be deliberately complacent about their nutrition, because the biggest group of interested people in nutrition are pregnant women.
Sure.
They want to get it right, they want to do the right thing, and when the child is up to the age of 1, it's all organic foods, and there's a huge amount of care going into this young little life. But after that, it's probably a mixture of everything that you said. It's longer working hours, longer commuting times, diminishing cooking skills, price, of food or fresh food, and the idea that if I have to eat well, I need to have a lot of money.
Yes.
All of these things are barriers to us really spending time seeking out things that could be helpful. So in fact, like even something like fish, fresh fish is perceived to be very high in price. But you can find it on special offer sometimes, and also you can buy tinned fish, which is equally as good in terms of the protein and the omega-3s in some cases, not all cases, but there are substitutes. So I don't think people are complacent, but I think that they're bewildered by the choice, they're bewildered by the labelling. There's a lot of them that are cynical about claims, you know, really is that low fat or is that really high fibre? Does it matter? Sure, didn't I read that was bad for me last week? You know, how could it be good for me
There is
this
a lot
week?
of confusion. I mean, every second week there's a new research study that says this is good for you, that's bad for you.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's very confusing for people.
That's media reporting.
Okay.
I mean, what we need to do is separate that, which is interesting.
Sure.
And as a
So
nutritionist,
it makes good news for them, doesn't it?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It sells papers.
Sure.
You know, sugar will kill your kids, and look how much is in this product here.
Sure.
Of course, that's going to grab everybody's attention. But what we have to do is we have to look at the body of evidence. So
Okay.
if there is a report that is pretty shocking in its result, we have to really look and see, well, is it substantiated by other reports? And are those other trials and clinical papers written by different universities or different groups of scientists, not just all by the same team? Do
And
you know
are
what I
they
mean?
funded by the very companies themselves that actually want us to believe certain things are healthy, certain things aren't healthy in relation to couples? Because it's couples are mainly watching this particular interview. And how does eating affect our relationships? If our partner is overeating and we don't want to say anything, and they invite us to have unhealthy foods with them, it can be very difficult to say, no, actually, I'm trying to cut down, I'm trying to lose weight. Maybe you should think about it yourself, because if the person is stuck in their own overeating habits,
Yeah.
then what would you say?
It is a very difficult situation, and I think one that I wouldn't put my hand up and say I have the answers to that, but I think, and you being an expert in this will know that the fine lines of being helpful and then stepping over that line and actually being very hurtful.
Sure.
So it is difficult, but I think rather than go ahead with the person and eat the food that you don't want them to eat or that you don't want to eat yourself, it is important to say, actually, you know, I really would prefer to have this option here. So, but rather than make the person feel bad, because really, to be honest, most people who are overweight know they're overweight and they are grappling and struggling with it. I've never met anybody who's overweight and as the image is perceived to be jolly and happy with that overweight. I mean, Dawn French, maybe. You know, I'm trying to think of
Sure.
You know, there are
some
a few
people
people who are
will say,
comfortable with their weight.
Yeah,
but you know,
I'm fine
most
with my
people,
weight.
yeah,
Yeah.
most people are always on and off diets. They don't want necessarily
diets.
to
Do
be
diets work?
strict. Fad diets don't
Don't
work.
work.
No, they don't work.
Isn't the diet really where you start asking yourself, why am I eating this? Is it healthy? Is it nutritious? Am I hungry?
Yeah.
Am I exercising to justify the energy I'm getting from the food? Isn't that really what a good diet would be?
Yeah, I think we really have to separate what we absolutely need for health and what is indulgent. And then, okay, is there another way of indulging ourselves?
That's not food.
That's not food, because really this is dragging us down, the whole obesity.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And maybe all we really need is a hug from our partners.
Absolutely.
And
or a nice bath. You know, if you don't
bath.
have a partner, you know, or go out and buy a car magazine or go to a football match or but you
something
need,
not food related.
Yeah, you do need to start treating yourself and rewarding yourself for the busy, hard working life that you have in a different way.
Okay, so not food.
With food, yeah, because this is a dangerous approach.
Okay.
And you know, I've seen a lot of really sad cases, particularly around just the ability to tap into hunger, you know, and to differentiate real hunger from an emotional hunger. One woman that I saw recently came in every day for 3 years when she was a youngster. She went to school with her little lunchbox and nothing in it but a tomato and a pinch of salt. And her mother had told her she was fat and that she needed to lose weight.
Oh my
now
God.
that woman said she used to take bread from the poor girl who sat beside her, who had nothing but brown bread. So she had no protein filling, it was just brown bread. But she felt so guilty taking the bread, but she was starving. She was literally starving. She was a growing, developing child, starving at lunchtime. But even now, she says, she cannot let herself get hungry. So she's constantly nibbling throughout the day. Okay. And it took a long time to explore why was she doing that, because she knew she was quite a well-adjusted, competent woman, but couldn't stop the nibbling. And until she actually started unraveling that and understanding where that came from and how it all began, and that pattern in her life which seemed to, you know, just keep her trapped in this nibbling all the time,
Sure.
with the consequence that she was very overweight and unfit and very miserable. She really had to take a long time to look back at her eating pattern, to explore that, to say, look, do you know what, I'm losing weight, it's okay to feel a little hungry.
Okay.
Expect that, because a lot of the diet books saying, no, you'll never feel hungry. You know, try this diet, you'll lose a rake of weight, you won't have to lift a finger to exercise, and you won't feel hungry.
Yeah.
That's rubbish.
Okay.
That is rubbish. If you are going to go and restrict your calories, and you're used to eating 2,000 calories, and you bring that down to 1,500 calories, your body's going to recognise that and go, something's different here.
Something
so you're
wrong.
going to get hunger signals. And what I'd say to people is, it's okay to feel a little hungry. That's
Sure.
fine.
Sure.
But it's when the hunger gets too big and too powerful. Like if you let yourself get too hungry, you won't make good choices.
You can't, 'cause
Literally,
you-
you'll come in
instant
the door and you'll
gratification
go,
immediately.
exactly, just
Okay.
give me something.
And the last question I want to ask you about is alcohol. Many people I would have met would conceive it's perfectly okay to have a half bottle of wine most nights of the week,
Yeah.
glass of wine at lunchtime, maybe go out at the weekend, have a 5 or 6 pints of Guinness or whatever the drink is of their choice. What are we doing to our bodies if we drink that much alcohol?
We are doing untold damage in the long term. If that's a habit that you've developed, absolutely. I mean, it's 14 units for a woman, which is, I think it's 14 very small glasses of wine. You know, a unit is a very small glass of wine, but the way we drink wine now is
Especially if you pour a whole measure is huge.
Yeah, a bottle is about nine units, depending on the strength of it.
Really?
Even around 9-10 units. Yeah,
So
because
like
we're drinking stronger percentage of wine.
A bottle and a bit is your 14 units.
For a woman, and for a man it's 22 units.
Okay.
21 units.
21
sorry,
units,
21
yeah,
units.
sure.
So it's about 10 and a half pints. Now, you know, there's nothing wrong with going out and having 14 pints one week and maybe having 5 pints another week. And if you're kind of yo-yoing a little bit like that, but if you're consistently over that threshold, then for most people it is it is doing harm. It is so toxic. It's the only thing that's absorbed through the stomach. Like your body wants to get rid of alcohol.
It's a poison,
basically.
isn't it?
It's a poison.
Poison, yeah.
So it absorbs it quickly through the stomach. It has to, break
rid
it
of it.
down,
Sure.
get rid of it as fast as it can. But I mean, I couldn't really tell you the internal damage that you're doing, but we know a lot about liver cirrhosis and
Sure.
the effects on.
Yeah, just even from the diet perspective, because
Yeah.
it's very easy on a Friday night. What'll I get? I'm starving. I'll have a bottle of wine and a Chinese.
Yeah.
And you have MSG.
And what is that? That's a kind of a reward.
It's
you
a
might
reward.
think it's not
I
a
had
reward,
tough
but it
week.
is a reward.
I had a tough week.
Yeah.
I deserve it.
Even the fact that you're not cooking is the reward for some people.
Yes.
The fact that you're giving yourself something really delicious
There's no
is a
hassle.
reward. But
Pick up the telephone.
Yeah. So we really have to think about that. Is there something? Okay, maybe you don't want to cook, but what else could you do? Could you put on the rice? And maybe order in the takeaway
Sure.
and order something healthier
Sure.
from the menu.
Sure.
And then even add in some frozen vegetables to that, so you haven't got
Singapore
as bad.
noodles, are they healthy? I love Singapore
I have
noodles.
no idea. I don't
I
know
think
what
they are.
Singapore.
I asked the man in the Chinese shop. I said, "Are Singapore?" He said they're the healthiest thing you can have.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't know
So
what
if you're getting
they are.
Chinese, Singapore noodles.
Singapore noodles. There's a good
There you
tip.
go. That's my advice to you.
Thank you.
Paula, thanks so much.
Thanks.
Cheers.